Welcome, everybody. Hi, good to see you all. My name is Ken Phelan. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Gotham Technology Group, and this is our Ask the Experts webinar. We've been doing this as an in-person event in some of the areas, and we decided to try this as a webinar. So I think what we're going to do, we did get a couple of questions, and we'll try to get to those for sure. Also, if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. We'll have some time at the end. But we thought we'd start off by first introducing everybody and then doing some sort of FAQs, like some questions that we're hearing all the time from people. So if our frequently asked questions do not cover your particular boggle, then we'll absolutely try to help that with the people that are here. So I'm going to kind of go around and let everybody introduce themselves to our panel of experts here today. And I'm going to use my screen geography to do that. So Brian, you're top left. So Brian, can you do an introduction for yourself there?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Brian Wagner. I'm the Practice Director of Cloud and End User Computing at Gotham.
Terrific. And Mr. Silverman, as if instructions are required. I think you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Not anymore. Great. Thanks. Thanks, Ken. So Adam Silverman, I'm the president of Gotham Technology Group, one of the founding partners, and I focus my efforts mostly on our staffing services group within the organization. So staffing services, which encompasses temporary and full-time placement at many of our customer sites.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mr. Gold.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Steve Gold. I'm our cybersecurity practice director. So I sit on the other side of Ryan's desk, focusing on cybersecurity services for our customers.
Perfect. So UC Cloud, Zapping, and cybersecurity. So we've got a good broad spectrum of solution sets here. So I think one of the things that we're hearing from customers, again, I'm the CTO, I'm your moderator. I used to be an expert, but now they just let me moderate. So we'll see how that works out. We're looking at kind of a challenging year for a lot of people, right? We came in this year, a lot of economic uncertainty, a lot of things going on. I think in the IT space, we saw a lot of tough budgets, a lot of layoffs, a lot of things going on there. So let's just do a check-in. How's the year kind of looking in your particular area? What sort of economic things to do? How do you see the end of the year working out? So I guess I'm going to start with you because that's obviously a pretty critical issue in the sort of the staffing environment. So how's the year been, and how do you see it shaping up, and maybe even comment a little about how you think it moves into 2025?
Sure, it's a great question, and actually, it's something that we see not just on within the staffing side of our organization, but probably throughout our organization. We hear a lot from our customers, a little bit of uncertainty and concern given economic conditions. Not really sure where it's going to go, what's happening with the election, so on and so forth. So there's been, specifically, as it relates to staffing, there's been somewhat of a hold on full-time hiring that we've seen within, some of our customers. But what interestingly happens when there's a hold on full-time hiring is that the projects still need to get done, and our customers have to figure out a way to do that. And we've been able to help by providing temporary services and consulting resources, contractors to fill that gap. They have to secure the perimeters. They have to do that one way or the other. And they've been doing that by increasing their usage of temporary resources in lieu of pulling the trigger on full-time hiring. And while full-time hiring still happens, it's been a little bit slower, and they put the brakes on it a bit, or have held off. And when they've done that, they've increased their usage of temporary resources.
That's awesome. Yeah, tough times. Agility is kind of everything, right? So that like having that sort of agility in myself. I mean, Steve, typically, not necessarily typically, but there's been this sort of rap that cybersecurity is immune from because cybersecurity always gets the money. Does that happen this year? Does it happen differently? I mean, how do you see the cyber initiatives running at our customers from an economic perspective?
Yeah, So I would say I don't know that I would use the word immune, but definitely not as open to having the money taken away from them. Right? They're still limited budgets. They're still looking to try and do more with less. But I will say that in 2024, we've seen a significant uptick in customers looking at net new products, net new technologies. We're hearing from our customers that they're looking to put some of these things that we're talking about in 2024 into their 2025 budget. A lot of customers are from a security side. A lot of customers are beginning to look at Microsoft, right? They're starting to take a look at what do they have that's not a Microsoft tool that they might be able to find a Microsoft alternative to, and then how does that compare to what they have, and how does that compare to maybe what's best of breed? But the budgets have not been closed. They haven't necessarily been increased from what I'm seeing, but they're not necessarily being impacted the way that some other areas are.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, you're riding this like wave to cloud, right? As kind of leading the cloud march at Gotham on the practice side. But obviously, cloud economics have been more challenging, than we thought they
Yes.
were going to be. I mean, so what are you seeing affected? Is the race to cloud still on? Is it smarter? Is it different?
It is, and a lot of the conversations we have, everyone's like, "Oh, where's the save in whatever you're doing?" Right? I need to find that save, and that's part of it. But as people have already moved, I think we're looking at better tooling, and we're helping customers find that. Basically, focus on FinOps, right? How do we understand where the cost is going in the cloud? The cloud providers do not make it easy to figure that out. Kind of like it doesn't help them, right? They're looking at trying to get as much revenue from their customers, so they make it a little bit, I would say, sometimes difficult to understand where the cost is going, how we're spending the money, how we potentially can reduce costs, whether that's right sizing workloads, whether that's looking at things like reservations or other ways to make a savings plans or other ways to make a commitment to the cloud provider to get a discount. And also, really just what else is out there, like orphan objects that people just leave, that forgot to clean up, or other things like that we're seeing everywhere. So FinOps has definitely been a huge focus for us, as people move to the cloud, and that's across all the clouds, right? Whether they're in AWS, Azure, Google, wherever they are, the problem's the same. So really helping customers understand how they can reduce that cost has definitely been a focus as people move. And we've had, we have seen some customers who move back, right? They move to cloud, and the no matter what they did to try to tweak it, tune it, optimize it, they couldn't get it down close to where it would have been, how they were managing the books earlier, right? Which was more of a capital expense, but they put that over a number of years. When they look at what it costs for maybe the last 3 years running in the cloud, it was a lot higher than they thought it was going to be. And we do have some customers either moving part of the real estate back, or maybe in some all of it. So I think it's important to understand what you're walking into. There are a lot of tools that we've also helped customers who aren't there yet to really try to assess what that cost is going to be and predict it a little bit more accurately than maybe we were able to do a few years ago, leveraging better tools.
Yeah, it's an outsourcing play. It has to make economic sense. I mean, that's just the foundation of it. I think we're seeing people be smart about it. But I think you can still be, to your point, you can still be in-house and be agile with better DevOps, better structures, better provisioning tools. All those things work out. I got to bring up the whole, like, 'cause we're seeing some, like, sort of, I call it like predatory vendor behavior, where some of these customers are sort of really increasing their prices. Like, I'm talking about obviously Broadcom, Citrix. Some of these people are really cutting some tough licensing deals and just being tough on customers. I mean, do you see the market shifting around that? I mean, how does that space look for you?
Yeah, on both ends of that. I mean, when it comes to cloud, what Broadcom's doing with VMware licensing and some of the increases, it's forcing customers to start to look at other options, right? And I think the same thing we could talk about on the EUC side, like being forced to look at other options because they can't afford the increase in cost, or they didn't budget for it, right? I mean, no one said, "Oh yeah, let me just put in 40%, 30% more than whatever it was last year." It's like that doesn't happen. So it's a tough place there that we are seeing customers try to reduce their reliance or start to figure out an exit plan, and I think that's part of it. And the same thing on the EUC side, Citrix, and part of the VMware acquisition for Broadcom was their product Horizon, and they quickly sold it off to a private equity company. So there's been a lot of changes in that space where renewals, we are seeing a major uptick in costs of renewals. 30% is kind of like a low, low number. If you got that, you're like supposed to celebrate or something. So I think it's been hard on our customers, and with that, it's also causing that inflection point to really understand how you're using these products, What are the use cases that we have around them? What other options do we have now? Because as more applications move to SaaS or other things, do they still need a full desktop? Maybe a secure browser is a nice thought or a way to go, or there might be some different options now that it's not like, oh, it's costs enough, like the cost is a place where we can manage it across. Well, now if the costs are going up so much, what other, they're being forced to look at other options, and where's that inflection point? So we've seen that already.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Terrific. I mean, and Steve, in your space, there's a lot of the vendor noise is also a lot, right? There's just too many vendors. There's a lot of consolidation, and even the people that are successful are kind of looking at their situation, saying, "Well, nobody wants to be a firewall vendor. No one wants to be our vendor. Everyone wants to be the platform." So, I mean, I think what kind of advice you can customers kind of navigate that space where there's consolidation. Everyone wants to be a platform. Like, what's the right play there?
Yeah, Ken, I think it's that as an organization, you really need to understand kind of what your capabilities are to manage that, right? If you've got a robust team, if they're not incredibly overstretched and you can work with best of breed and you're willing to pay for it, right? Then maybe that's the area for you. If you're trying to do a little bit more with a little bit less, if you're looking to try and consolidate some of your overall tools so you don't have to perhaps increase your labor costs, looking at a platform might be good. But I think determining where you're comfortable from a security perspective is going to be important. I talk to a lot of companies and I hear from high-level security people that in some cases they're okay with good enough. They don't need the best identity tool. They don't need the best EDR tool. They just need something that's good enough. And if they can get good enough through the platform, minimize their coverage, minimize the number of screens or the panes of glass, minimize the training that that their team has to go through, and even potentially consolidate some of their licensing in, they're okay with that and they move forward with that. But I think the most important part is really trying to help the customer understand what their goals are over the next couple of years and where they want to go. Ken, you brought up a great comment earlier yesterday, is that when a company's looking at a tool, think about it. Like if you bought this tool today and you knew that you had to keep it for 5 years, would you still make the tool? And if you're going with a startup, maybe somebody that hasn't been proven out there and you're kind of taking a chance on them, is it worth the chance to try and get maybe that increased functionality at that lower price, or is it not? I think it's going to be a decision that each company really needs to take a look at introspectively when they go to make those decisions.
Yeah, here's the thing about what's core and what's sort of on the periphery, right? So if I get an Intel tool from a startup and it's just something that I kind of use and whatever, and it works for a few years, maybe that's okay. But I certainly don't want to swap out my endpoint or my SIM or any of those things on any kind of regular basis. So I think when you're thinking about your SASE sets, like some things are just so integrated with so many elements, identity elements. You just really need to have that 5-year view on it, right? It pays to be a little more conservative when you're going to be touching that many operational points. So, I mean, Adam, one of the problems for people traditionally in both this cloud space and the cybersecurity space has just been you can't get people, right? We're talking about these issues and trying to move away from customers and do a little more with people. Do you see the labor market loosening up with the way things are going, or are there good engineers and people available in this space? Like, how is your team seeing the availability for these high end skills?
Sure. So I think everyone knows, probably a year ago and throughout sort of COVID times, it was a big challenge to hire talent and to find talent, find good talent, because everyone was hiring, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So things have certainly slowed down a bit, as I mentioned earlier, and as a result, the understanding would be that there are more candidates available, and there certainly are. But the question is, are the candidates that we're looking for the diamonds in the rough, the candidates who excel at what they do? Are those candidates readily available? And that's what really makes our staffing group shine for many of our customers, because in many of our customer environments, we're already there, working in in some capacity, and we understand what our clients are looking for. And so It's not just about the technology that makes a candidate shine. It's about their soft skills as well. And so making that match for many of our customers has really separated what we can offer and has helped us along with our own engineering teams provide the right candidate in our customer environment. So in answer to your question, though, is there more available? Yes. Has the market opened up a bit? It has. But it's really, the search is still challenging to find that great resource that is going to help our customers, excel not just in the short term, but in the long term too. And of course, I mean, for many of our practices, our cybersecurity practice and everything, and many of the others, our customers will partner with Gotham for some of those solutions, but they'll also look to manage resources themselves, and that's when they'll engage our staffing practice to bring in a temporary resource that maybe that they're not looking to have it managed. They want to manage themselves, and or they're looking for full-time help, and so. Working with Gotham and working with even our professional services team to help identify those resources has really gone a long way, and has helped us really find the right resource for them.
Awesome, thanks. So I mean, a lot top of mind for a lot of people is just we've had a lot of things in the ransomware stuff still comes up, the CrowdStrike stuff. I think resiliency is just a big issue for everybody. It's not just a cyber issue. It's not just a cloud DevOps issue. But I think I'd really like to hear, Brian, see both of you talk about. I guess I'll start with Steve this time, because I started with Brian last time. To talk about like how you see, because I think I'm going to cast dispersion on the whole industry. Right, we're super good at creating a bunch of tools for things that happened yesterday, and not always so good at worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, like fundamental issues. Right, so how do you see our growth in this space? Are we growing towards a real resiliency? Are we just band-aiding about problems that happened yesterday? What do you think the tool sets are, and what are the actions people should be taking, Steve?
I think the tool sets are working towards resiliency. I think there's companies out there that make their bread and butter on creating resiliency. Companies like Rubrik or Nutanix or other areas that are building in those capabilities to ensure you have the resiliency to keep your environment up and running. I think that sometimes it also takes a little bit of planning to think about that. The CrowdStrike thing was a horrible thing for a lot of people. It was not done on purpose. It was not done maliciously. It was not done because they were attacked or any reason. It was one of those things that just happened. And after the fact, to your point, Ken, companies realized that they had a gap because they didn't necessarily have a plan. And sometimes, it takes a couple of cars to be stolen on your street before you invest in the club, right? And sometimes you have to kind of see that because you're focused on doing the things that you know about. You're not focused on doing the things you don't know about or that you're not prepared for. So sometimes, I think the market grows and companies expand their capabilities and vendors expand their capabilities and companies expand their purchases and expand their own internal capabilities based upon what they're seeing. And ransomware, I think, is a perfect example. Ransomware was a big thing initially and everybody was freaking out about it, but then it was happening so often where you were hearing about a company that got hit or multiple companies that got hit with multiple identities that were taking. And you're starting to think like, all right, well, I'm sure my information's out there. Like, really nothing I can do to protect myself. They're going to get everybody. But there are a lot of things that companies can do to try and make it better. There's things that they can put in, like the example of the club, right? If I'm going to try and steal a car, I got two cars. One of them's got the club and the other one doesn't. I'm going to go after the one that's harder to get into because it's going to take me 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds more to get the car. But the resiliency is definitely being built into a lot of tools today. And more companies, I think, are starting to leverage those things as they're seeing the time it takes for other organizations to recover or even respond to some of those incidents that are happening.
Yeah, I also think it's fundamental. It's if you really understand your environment, you really know what you got, and even like I don't think the compliance stuff even helps in terms of like, do you know what your key crown jewels are? Do you know how to recover them? Do you know that stuff? I mean, I think people have to do that. I mean, do you see people kind of doing that foundational work, like not just buying a product, but like figuring out their stuff?
I see companies believing that they have it, but really under the covers knowing that they don't. Most, I started, before this, Ken, I was at the Center for Internet Security, and the CIS controls talk about, you really can't protect what you can't see. And there's three specific controls that go into understanding your assets, your users, and your software, because those are really the three most susceptible things that you have in your organization. And if you don't know what you have, you can't protect it. So when I talk to companies now, like, yeah, we have an Excel, we use the CMDB, we've got this system for on-premise and this system for cloud, but they will almost always admit that they know that they're not accurate. So if you're only seeing 80% of your environment, you're only protecting 80% of your environment. So we're starting to see a lot more companies look into those types of asset or attack surface management solutions that provide visibility into the entire environment, including those shadow IT devices, right? Maybe it's something that you know about because it's a TV in someone's office and all it's doing is traversing your network, but maybe it's something more than that. Maybe it's somebody doing malicious work or about to do malicious work in your environment. If you can't see it, you can't protect yourself from it.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. I mean, Brian, your team does the recoveries. I mean, I know we've done a lot of, obviously, we're very busy recovering people from the CrowdStrike stuff. Your team is very busy, unfortunately, way too often on ransomware and our
Yeah.
customers. It's turning into a pretty common thing. I mean, so as the person that kind of runs the recovery, I mean, you see resiliency in a much more like rubber to the road level. So how do you see this problem? What are you looking for? Like, what are you hoping to see when you show up to a customer that you're recovering? And what do you go, oh my goodness, I don't, this is not going to go well.
At some level, as Steve mentioned, some of the tools out there or products out there that really help you. I think what I've seen is this major shift over the last few years of this conversation changing from an infrastructure conversation to the cybersecurity group, right? And kind of like now they own a lot of the recovery or the resilience plan. And as part of that, they're like, all right, where are our crown jewels? Like, no, like I think the infrastructure people are very focused on the tasks that they need to do to recover. If something happens, I go into my backup product and I restore it right onto the stuff we have. We've done a restore, it'll work, but the assumption is that you have something to restore to. Your environment's okay. The outside of the box thinking of, oh, what if we don't have that environment to restore? How are we going to function? So I think there's been this increased focus of looking at what are the things that make our company work. What are the tier 0, tier 1 applications that we need to focus on, those crown jewels, and then mapping out the dependencies is probably the hardest piece there because they think they have a handle on, oh, it just uses this database or just, and then as you actually put that into an isolated environment to try to recover it, and then you have to look at all the things that it needs. And, oh, wait, I forgot it leverages this for DNS and there's a conduit to this other server application, and map those things out. Those are the little things that'll bite you when you try to recover and you don't know when you haven't mapped it out. So I think there's products there that help. The other pieces is just trying to understand how do we do as little as possible in the event of a disaster, right? I don't want to have a ton of manual tasks, a full run book of things that I need to do. So what options do we have? And DevOps is one of those areas, or just leveraging code to do your deployments and leveraging code, really as much as possible to help you standardize on how things are done. And if you needed to quickly do them, how you would, it doesn't become something that you're doing in the middle of a disaster. It's actually just part of your normal operational procedure, right? Every time we do a deployment, we hit these things, a pipeline kicks off and it builds these 5 things after that. If we have those structures set up in a disaster situation, then it's just like that piece is not a huge chore of, okay, wow, I have all the data, but now I need to rebuild this Oracle cluster, or I need to do XYZ. If we can hit a button and the Oracle cluster is built and now we're just restoring the data, it's a much different conversation, and it leads you to a much quicker recovery time. So as people try to really get the lowest RPO and RTO for their environment, these are the things that help them significantly.
Yeah, I know I know you've helped a lot of customers just with like their VDI, whatever form VDI that they have. If all your apps are publishable and you can expand your VDI compartment by pushing a button, it
Yep.
solves a lot of problems. If you wake up and all your laptops are bricked, you've got
Yeah, I
options.
was
If
about to
this
say, I
happens,
think that what kind of the CrowdStrike thing brought up, and not that but it just brought up, and we've had a couple customers who are already focused on this, but everyone's very focused on the servers and bricking, ransomware in your server environment, but not so much on the client. Like, how do the clients recover if they get bricked, if they get a ransomware event, if there's something that they can't do? How do we get them back in, right? And we've been helping customers think about that side too, of leveraging maybe things like iGel for a better secure and endpoint operating system that they can either just plug in a dongle into their machine, right, and then boot into a secure operating system that even if their device is bricked, they could still use it as a conduit to get to a virtual desktop that maybe we light up when we break glass or some of those situations. So I think these solutions we've been helping our customers now plan and design and test and implement to have at the ready, and when you have all that kind of, if you've gone through the process before, when it happens, everything gets a lot easier, or you don't have that fright of like, what do we don't know? Like, what don't we know? We've already been down this road. We mapped it out.
yeah. I wanted to bring up we're still living in a big hybrid remote world. A lot of things are going on, and it's just making like, on the cyber side, identity being even more important. I know, Adam, you and I have had conversations about the identity and proving out people and who the people are. So, I mean, Steve, on your side for the identity stuff, like, how do you see that changing now that we're, kind of getting more and more spread out? Is that, what's going on in that space?
Yeah, it's dangerous, Ken. I would say identity is probably the number one attack vector now, right? With all of those breaches that have happened for all of those years, all of those usernames and all of those passwords have already been captured. So now it's a question of trying to figure out what the username might be at Acme Corporation, right? I know that I can look on LinkedIn and I can see these 50 people or 100 people work at Acme. Now I'm going to find out I'm going to figure out what their username is based upon maybe some email addresses, and I'm going to try every single one of these passwords that these people have used across these different social media or retail outlets or, Verizon or whatever it is that they're doing for, and they're going to start trying those. So protecting the users against themselves is really the hardest part. Hackers are not hacking in anymore; they're logging in with valid credentials. So setting up those firewalls, as it were, with things like multi-factor authentication, setting up things like SASE now, where the user has this completely encrypted tunnel to connect them from where they are to their secured network and secure the data flows back and forth, are becoming more and more prevalent. I mean, multi-factor authentication alone is something that's relatively simple to do. It's relatively inexpensive to do, and it provides such a huge security bump in your posture to do something like that. We've had a customer that's been looking at MFA for a year, and they were going back and forth between the different vendors, and well, this one had a breach and this one had an incident. They didn't do anything, and then when they were finally ready to, they actually got breached, and they got breached because they didn't have MFA. Protecting those identities is really hard, to ensure that, sorry, not hard, but important. It's also hard, but it's important to make sure that you know who your users are, what they have access to, what they are accessing. Verify those access certifications. Whether it's going to be every 6 months or so. Make sure that you know that they only have access to what they need, and then building in that defense in depth, those layers of security for that user to come in, and possibly even the bump up security, maybe something that they haven't accessed in a while and now they're accessing it. Maybe prompt for MFA at that point. Do some extra work just to try and make sure that those people are those people.
Yeah, I'm always a little confused that I have MFA on my World of Warcraft account and people don't have them on their corporate accounts. I would strongly suggest your company is at least as important as my characters in World of Warcraft. I know, Adam, I know we were talking about some stuff that you were surprising me with about some new like identity kind of fraud stuff in your space. Maybe you could take a minute and just explain what's going on there.
Yeah, for some of our customers, even on this call, that do a fair amount of hiring, either part-time or full-time, you may have already experienced something that has become very big, a big concern lately, and that's candidate fraud. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with it or haven't experienced it, I'm very happy. I'd be very, very happy to hear that. But the issue really is that, especially with the onset of remote work, what we found is that candidates who are interviewing for roles aren't necessarily the ones who show up to do the work, or they may be moonlighting and working on multiple jobs, and they may be working in different locations internationally when we thought maybe they were right around the corner and able to come on site. So Gotham spent a lot of time researching and evaluating certain products that will help us narrow down this candidate fraud issue. And it's something that's not just going to go away. It's getting bigger and bigger, and we expect to see it become more of an issue down the road. And so, again, we are testing and evaluating products that are helping us narrow that down. So it's not just protecting our perimeters; it's protecting our people and protecting our client sites from this candidate fraud. So a big issue that we know is getting bigger in our industry, and Gotham's really attacking it by helping our clients narrow down who's actually providing the services when they are using temporary and even full-time hiring that may be somewhat remote when the candidate's not spending 5 days a week inside an office.
Ken, it's funny, jumping onto what Adam said, it's going back to the identity thing as well. It's the MGM breach, right? That's where somebody pretended that they were somebody else, and they were able to get those credentials reset, and they were able to log in with a valid credential and be able to get in there. It's that type of I don't want to say reactive, but the industry was not aware that something like that was happening. And maybe there were a couple of tools that were starting to think about it, but it wasn't until after it happened where some of these single sign-on or multi-factor or help desk tools now are starting to leverage identity governance platforms and human resource platforms, so that when somebody calls in and says, I can't log in. Can you reset my password? It's, well, let's jump on a FaceTime. Let's jump on a Zoom. Let's jump on a WebEx. Use your phone and do this. And I want to see your face and compare it to the ID that you provided when you joined the company. Yeah, I know you grew a beard. I know your hair's a little grayer. I know your hair's a little shorter, but I'm going to be able to tell if it's you. And they started to create that to address exactly what Adam's talking about around identity fraud, because we're seeing it more and more across everywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So my hair was grayer. It's grayer now than when I joined Gotham. Is that what you're saying?
So you're saying I feel a little judged myself too in that conversation.
Been here for
Just
25
be happy
years.
you still have your hair.
Yeah.
Some of us aren't as lucky.
Right. So I do have one question up here, but if you've got more questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to start this question I have, and I'm actually going to make it a little broader. The question was, can you talk about proven implementations of AI for cyber? But I think we can all talk a little bit about what's real with AI from our perspective. How are we using it in our different divisions? Or how are our customers using it? How are our vendors using it? So I'll start with you, Steve, because I think that was he was going for the cyber. So from an AI perspective, where is it working in cyber? Where is it not working? Where is it emerging? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's working, right? So if the answer to the question was, is it working? It's working, and it's working well, right? There are companies that have been able to overcome significant hurdles and migrate their capabilities to increase the protection. Endpoint detection companies, right? We went from signature-based viruses to endpoint detection and response, where we're looking at behavioral work. We're not waiting for something to be known and then to be able to build something to prevent it. We're being proactive, and we're using machine learning, not we, but those companies that provide that are leveraging machine learning within their tools, within their products, within their security operations centers and network operations centers, to identify those types of either malicious or unplanned types of behavior that are now helping us to identify those threats before they actually happen. So, all of the major EDR companies that are out there, the NDR companies, MDR, just, whatever you want to say with detection and response, they've all integrated that type of machine learning or artificial intelligence into their tools, into their systems, and even into their processes to ensure that they're able to identify those things quicker than they would have normally been able to.
Yeah, that's great. I think when you're separating the wheat from the chaff, too, I always say, think about the people. Machine learning relies on data. So think about the people that have the data. They are going to, and everybody had some data to develop their product. The people that are in the center of the data problem are going to be more effective going forward and learning faster going forward. I mean, Brian, do you see AI stuff happening in your space, even like the ChatGPT? Like what, like how are I'm sure in the DevOps space, right? So how are you seeing that space?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple areas that we've seen a lot of change. Specifically, a lot of the monitoring solutions are starting to leverage AI a lot more and machine learning there to predict when there might be issues, understand anomalies, right, a little bit better by kind of baselining data and leveraging machine learning to spot those things that don't look like they normally do, right? So those are some areas I think, whether it's endpoint analysis, infrastructure, monitoring, those types of solutions are kind of focused on leveraging some of that now and moving more towards that, and we've already seen that change. On the DevOps side, there's just so many tools to help people who are trying to get started in DevOps. And I think that's the biggest thing, whether it's Copilot for GitHub that we're getting a lot of, starting to see a lot of people leverage, or just Copilot or ChatGPT in general to help people code or get out of the gate or get past a hurdle that they might be facing. There's definitely, I think it's becoming part of every day, and it's just different. So, it's not a question of, whether you should use it. It's just really what the best way is to use it, and understanding how to prompt and how to get the most out of it, I think has become a huge place for us when you're asking more of the question answer type things that you might get out of like a GitHub Copilot or a regular Copilot type of scenario. But even Copilot in general is pretty cool. I don't know who's played with it or how many people are looking at it, but just being able to have it help you summarize maybe a spreadsheet or maybe you're looking to understand how to create a formula to do something or things like that can help you get out of the gate. So we're just seeing it more in just like daily work and operations, just for whatever your job is. There's probably somewhere in there that you could be leveraging it more and more.
No, I think it's awesome, and certainly coders. I don't know. I think you're really, if you've got coders in your organization, they're going to be a lot more effective with those tool sets. I know people are scared of them, whatever, but it's almost like, and I gotta really show my gray here. It's like when spreadsheets first came out, people were like, I don't trust those things. I'm gonna use my calculator. I saw someone made a huge mistake on the spreadsheet this one time. I'm like, yes, you can make huge mistakes on spreadsheets, calculators also, but certainly, spreadsheets for the future. And I think it's the same thing with these co-pilots, chat GPTs, not just for communications, but certainly for coding. It doesn't solve the problem, it doesn't take away the need for coders, but it does move the process along much faster.
Yeah, and some people are coding that really have no coding experience right now, which is also great and scary all at the same time. But you're starting to get some people out there who are kind of doing work instead of bringing in somebody. They'll try it, right? Hey, create me a script that's going to export all the users out of Active Directory, including name and office location and blah blah blah, right? And it'll give you the code to go ahead and do that. Obviously, yeah, you're right. It's a little scary and trying to find those checks and balances. So what we've been doing a lot with what we're doing with DevOps is kind of building those processes to run the code through some level of like an AI type of checker to understand, hey, is this code okay? Are there anything glaring either from just a efficiency, security, or other areas to kind of validate and then have that automatically happen every time we develop new code and post it or publish it or try to kick it off, that there's a gate that's going to actually look at that code and decide whether it should be able to proceed and process in the environment. And I think those are solutions that we're starting to see more of, because as people use this more, we need to understand, how do we put governance around it? How do we understand what it's doing and have some level of a check? And then how do we have like an artifact or some type of report of what it saw and what happened, right? And maybe if there's a critical, don't let it run, right? But if there's an informational thing, just tag it. Here we go. Here's a report that came out of it. We let it process, but at least you know what was in there.
Yeah.
And I jump in. I love a quote that our VP of Staffing Services, Jennifer O'Connell, constantly repeats, and that is, AI is not going to replace us. People who know AI are going to replace people who don't know AI. So AI, everyone's talking about it. We have many clients who are looking to hire in that space and within different areas and different expertise within AI. But it is new, and people are still learning it. And so if you're not playing around with it, if you don't know it, definitely don't get behind the eight ball and spend some time there. But we are using it even on the recruiting side. In many ways, it's helping us. Our recruiting team. they're not experts in every area of technology. And while we do provide temporary and full-time resources within many areas in IT, AI has really helped us qualify our candidates and make sure that they know what they say they know. It helps us understand and determine proper questions and tools and understand the tools that maybe they say that they're using, and really to figure out if what's on their resume and what's in their backgrounds they really have experience with. So AI has been a big help, just in the recruiting space.
Yeah, I think it's again. I think the generative AI stuff, the chats and the copilots, that's obviously a tool set I think people need to think into. I think the machine learning stuff is actually in the long run going to be more important, but it's also like challenging from the perspective of, as a customer, you probably don't have enough data unless you're the largest of fortunes. You probably don't have enough data matched with outcomes to learn. I mean, obviously the hedge funds, those people who have market data, but you've got to have the data sets that are important to you. It's very hard, from an AI perspective. Hospitals aren't going to develop machine learning to cure cancer. Pharmaceuticals are going to do that stuff. Like, you have to have a lot of data. So one of the things I tell people is, like, get into the right tribe. That's why that, like, buying these, buying CrowdStrike, the other tools, I think are good sets, because it's a larger data set with a lot of outcomes. Machine learning is going to work a lot faster. Trying to learn just from your endpoint data, if you're a 1,000-node company, you just don't have enough data and outcomes to learn by yourself. So that's not the right structures. I don't think I have any more specific things. I guess you have more questions.
Thing I was going to say around the AI world is just, there are experts who understand. So we talk a lot about generative, AI, like general AI, right? But like, there are AIs that are built for a specific purpose, and when you do that, right, you have a lot more capability. And I know that we've, on the staffing side, had some resources that we've leveraged at a couple of our customers to help them kind of, less IT stuff, right? More business focused, but how do we leverage IT and AI to help drive more things around the business? So whether that's, having AI dig into the marketing data and identify different, demographics that they should be targeting, or other things like that. It's been pretty amazing, actually, and eye-opening for me to hear some of the stories from our customers that came back and said, hey, they came in and they were able to, kind of look at this set of data that we have in our data warehouse and gather all new insights about that data. And I think that's where it starts to get a little bit more exciting than the general stuff that we see.
Yeah. And we do some service offerings to kind of come in and help people look at the data, look at their structures, figure out what's interesting from it. So this next question is, given the exploding pager supply chain hack, can you comment on component authenticity, anti-counterfeit tools training? I guess, Steve, this is a pretty specific and thing, but given the pager attack, do you think there are tools or training around anti-counterfeit structures that you could talk about, or?
Not specifically. I mean, I know that there are. When I was, reading the articles like we all were about, kind of what happened and stuff, it makes me start to think that there were gaps within the process that people were overlooking due to try and get something done quicker, right? So whether it's that we need to get more pagers, we need to have these devices moved to this location, and that you start to skip certain steps that you've been doing over and over again, just in the goal of expediency, right? There's times where you just start to skip things and you don't do them, or you do them before you think you did them because you're trying to get things done. I'm not aware. I mean, security awareness training is going to be out there, and there's a lot of different capabilities and modules. It's more focused around the more common types of threats. I think the anti-counterfeit tools and training or component authenticity is not to every single organization, but it's to specific organizations. I think anyone in retail or manufacturing probably has some level of component authenticity there, but I'm not familiar with any specific anti-counterfeit training that exists today. I think it's more of just that the process should be followed, even when sometimes it may not meet the goals, or the goals need to be adjusted to allow the process to happen. But something's got to give. You can't just keep on doing more with less every single day. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think third-party risk is blowing up, right? And I think part of this is a process legal question. Like, a lot of our larger organizations, know their vendors, run third-party risks, go out and audit, and also like even like license, like they have a EULA with every single manufacturer. They know who their manufacturer is. They won't buy from three guys in a garage. But many of our customers don't sort of do that digging to sort of like know your vendors. I think that process, and I also think the whole, this to me it's a broader issue, which is the whole SBOM, software supply chain stuff, because I think that's a much more likely scenario that you're going to get infected code from GitHub, or you're going to get stuff moved from a vendor that you're trusting code sets on. I mean, that, like, for most of us, that's a much more problematic and probably real threat in my mind, than that we're going to get exploding pagers.
Yeah, I would say you're right. They're talking about the physical supply chain. We're talking about, but supply chain is really what it comes down to. Who you getting code? What other things are you interacting with? Who's in that cycle? Who's in that process? Because I think that's where we're also seeing, things like SolarWinds, right? There were a lot of things like this that people kind of got in, right? And once they get into that code, it's difficult. You got a trusted product at that point that's already in house. So I do think that there's an increased focus, right, in this now. But as you were saying, Ken, like, we do our due diligence against our vendors. The vendors need to do due diligence against all the people that they're vendors, right? Who are all the products and things that they're working with. And it's got to go all the way down the chain to really have better success in this.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of just, I mean, just name a specific vendor, right? We're seeing a lot of just like this reversing lab stuff that just basically does a diff on every new piece of software that comes in and tells you if there's new behaviors, something's not doing, what's going on. Like, it's important to understand the behaviors. And again, this isn't just about big vendors. Like, everybody gets some software from a small person doing some stuff. And I think it's a huge threat.
Yep. So coming back to those gates and having it automatically as part of their process, doing those checks and validating what changed and what else did we see and what kind of behavior change and things like that. I think those are the, whether you're doing DevOps in for your company, or whether these vendors are doing that same type of things, right? Those are the checks that they kind of need to start implementing to at least understand, every iteration of what might have changed between last version and this version.
Okay, it was a great question. Thank you for putting that in. All right, so we're coming up on our time here. I'd love to just kind of close with maybe just go around to the group and just talk about, if you just give a couple of top of mind things for when you're thinking about 2025, what should be top of mind for our customers, how to be effective in their space. I guess I'll stick with you, Brian, because you can kind of talk.
Sure. I like to talk. So, yeah, I think, as we've been seeing, I've been talking DevOps a few times on this, on this webinar. I think that's an area that I think there's a misconception that you really need to be in the cloud to leverage DevOps. It's not true. You can do everything, or almost everything, right? Leverage, for on-prem. So I think it's if you haven't dipped your toes into the DevOps world, those are an area that I think you should definitely start doing. And there's a lot of benefit for on-prem or cloud in those scenarios. The other thing is that I know we've had a lot of customers. We didn't really talk a lot about EUC today, but we have a lot of customers that are, being forced into some questions around their future for EUC, or maybe just signed a multi-year agreement on the product that they're on, Citrix or Horizon or whatever they might have been using for years. But bear in mind, probably the next, renewal is going to also be significantly higher. And we're what I would urge customers to do is to start using the time they have now as a runway to start looking at alternatives, or at least educating themselves on what the other options are right now. Whether they're cloud-based products like Azure Virtual Desktop with Nerdio, or workspaces, or hybrid cloud products like WorkSpot, or some of the other things, or secure browsing products. We're talking to customers about all these things, helping customers evaluate and pilot, so that, as they get closer to those inflection points or decision points that they have, they're ready, they understand what works in their environment, right? And it's less of a shock or scramble to plan.
It's no easy task to get off some of those platforms, but certainly if you don't start, you're not going to get off.
Correct.
Yes. Adam, what are you thinking about for 2025? What should we be thinking?
So I think part of it is a repeat of what we mentioned, that the candidate availability has increased, but those diamonds in the rough aren't very easy still to find. And so for those of you who are looking to really build up your teams, whether it's for temporary or full-time resources, plan, ahead of time. And even if you're not ready to pull the trigger, reach out to, your Gotham rep and and let us work with you to pipeline what those resources are going to be, you know, whether it's for Q4 or even getting into 2025, because no one wants sort of the average player. We want, you know, what we're used to seeing in working together, you know, whether you're utilizing currently a Gotham resource or someone from our professional services team. But that level is still very difficult to find. And so let's plan ahead together and, you know, let us help you build up your teams.
Yeah, there's an old hiring adage, right? If you want somebody in the top percentile, you'd be prepared to talk to 100 people. I always like the part where you talk to the other 99. I just meet the one guy. Like,
That's exactly right. Leave that up to us. We're the ones speaking to those 99 others and putting forward that one diamond in the rough.
Thanks, man. Mr. Gold, bring us home.
So, you know, for 2025, the thing that I'm seeing a lot of companies do is they're identifying a specific area within their organization that they need to resolve, right? So maybe it's some of the things that Brian talked about where, you know, we're seeing increase in renewals, maybe we're seeing through acquisition, and we need to address this one component, and we're going to go and get rid of this product, and we're going to look at this product, or I want to compare this product to the Microsoft alternative, but they're not necessarily doing it with any type of priority, right? I think taking a step back and really getting a baseline of your security posture, whether it's using some sort of a risk-based assessment like a NIST or a CIS, or doing a business impact analysis to truly understand your crown jewels and understand what's important and what you need to protect, is really something that's worthwhile. And then having that be the foundation to determine what your budget is going to go to, or what tools you're going to be looking at, what services you might want to augment, because you don't want to buy a tool or you don't want to have to train people on it. But without understanding the priority of those gaps, you're sometimes spending bad money instead of good, or you're fixing a problem that's not as bad as leaving a much worse problem unfixed. So I think doing some sort of a BIA or a risk assessment is going to be really good. And then I also think understanding what you have, right? You know, making sure that you know what devices you're protecting, what users you're protecting, what software you're protecting, and what SaaS apps you have. You know, we offer a no-cost assessment that gives you visibility into your entire organization. If it's something that you haven't done, or if you're tired of filling out your Excel spreadsheet, or if you absolutely know that your data is not accurate, you know, reach out to us and let us know. But if you can't protect what you can't see, and that's going to be one of the biggest problems organizations have, I think, as we go into 2025.
Awesome. Very, very fair and good advice. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for being the experts today. I appreciate you guys joining. Thank you for all the customers who joined and the questions that we got. I hope this was useful. We will be recording it. We do record it. So it'll be available if you want to forward it along to some people who you think should see it as well. Thank you guys. Everybody have a great day.